Welcome to KBA Vendor Viewpoint. This is Selena Parrish, KBA Director of Membership, Products, and Services. Today we are featuring KBA-endorsed SeayHR. We are pleased to have SeayHR's CEO, Marci LaRouech, and Vice President, Sissy Egan. Thank you both for being with us today. Marci and Sissy, please tell our audience all about your roles there with SeayHR.
Thanks, Selena. My name is Marci LaRouech, and I'm the CEO and owner of SeayHR. I have about 20 years of HR experience, and most recently, about a year ago, I acquired SeayHR from Sandy C. He is still around and thriving and doing well, but he was so kind to trust me with the legacy of this company. And so for the past year, I've been the CEO of our organization, continuing to support organizations like the KBA and your members. For all things HR, and whether that's compliance or strategy, we're here to help. And so, yeah, really excited to continue this long-standing relationship with KBA. And I'll pass it over to Sissy.
Thank you, Marci. Hi, I'm Sissy Egan, and I'm a human resources consultant with SeayHR, where I've had the pleasure of supporting KBA members for over 20 years. My focus is to assist bank management to build strong, compliant, and people-centered workplaces, whether that's through handbook development, employee relations, or navigating complex issues like OFCCP compliance, compensation, or administering a leave of absence. Thanks.
There are so many hot topics in human resources right now. And I noticed in your recent newsletter, you mentioned the impact the Supreme Court's recent injunctions ruling and how it may impact HR for our members. Can you please share more with our audience?
Yes, thanks, Selena. I'd be happy to do so. So starting here with the Supreme Court decision from just a few weeks ago, it can really significantly reshape how federal regulations are enforced. And why this matters deeply to your institutions, especially from an HR and compliance standpoint, is a couple of ways. So just a little bit of background for those of you who might not be familiar with this. On June 27th of this year, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a landmark decision in Trump versus Casa Inc. in a 6-3 ruling. The court held that federal district courts no longer have the authority to issue nationwide injunctions. Those are court orders that block federal laws or regulations from being enforced across the entire country. Instead, courts now only issue relief that applies to the specific parties involved in a case. And this is a really major shift across the board. For decades, a single district court ruling could pause a federal rule for everyone, everywhere. And that is no longer the case with this recent Supreme Court ruling. So why should your KBA members care? Because this ruling introduces regulatory fragmentation. So let's take the FTC's proposed ban on non-compete agreements from last year as an example. That rule was blocked last year by a federal court in Texas. But under this new precedent, that kind of universal block may no longer be valid, or at least not sustainable. The same goes for executive orders related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. Several of these were paused by nationwide injunctions, but now enforcement could resume in some jurisdictions while remaining blocked in others. That's a lot. So what if your institution happens to have employees in multiple states? This could mean that you could be subject to a different federal rules depending on where your employees are located. One of your branches might be under one set of rules, while another is under a completely different set of rules. This Supreme Court ruling underscores just a growing reality across the country, regardless of this particular ruling. HR compliance is becoming a patchwork quilt of state, local, and now, an evenly applied federal rules. Another example, a DEI initiative might be enforceable in New York, but blocked in Texas. A non-compete clause might be invalid in California, but still enforceable here in Florida, where I am, depending on how the courts interpret the FTC's authority in each jurisdiction. So this is going to create legal uncertainty and increase the risk of non-compliance, especially for multi-state employers like banks and financial institutions that I know are members there. So what can you do as employers? First, stay vigilant and monitor. It's not that it's like we don't already have that much to cover already, right? That we have to stay vigilant on as business owners and leaders. We need to monitor these legal developments now, not just at the federal level, but in each state where you operate. Second, review your HR policies, especially around non-competes, DEI, and wage transparency. These are some of the recent rulings that have been in nationwide injunctions that now may have changes. And third, we always recommend that you partner with legal and HR experts because navigating this new landscape is not optional. Unfortunately, it's essential. We have to do it. So it's no longer a world where one court ruling gives you clarity. It's a world where compliance is conditional and risk is regional. So in summary, Selena, the court has changed the rules of the game. And for employers, especially those in regulated industries like y'all, this means more complexity, more risk, and a greater need for proactive compliance strategies around HR.
Definitely. And Marci, thank you for the update because that's definitely a big change and something that several of our KBA members that have branch locations outside of Kentucky definitely need to pay attention to.
Exactly.
I understand that KBA members receive requests from employees to accommodate the Americans with Disabilities Act, also known as ADA, as well as the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. Since these requests must be handled in an intentional way, what do you recommend our members do if they receive one of these accommodation requests?
Well, this is Sissy. I'll take this one. The
Thank
Pregnant
you.
Workers Fairness Act is a federal law that took effect in 2023, and it applies to employers with 15 or more employees. It requires employers to provide reasonable accommodation for known limitations related to pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions, unless doing so would cause an undue hardship on the institution or the company. Now, what makes PWFA unique is that it applies even if the condition does not qualify as a disability under ADA. It's important to know that employers cannot force an employee to take leave if there's a reasonable accommodation that would allow them to continue working safely at the bank. Here are a few real world examples that I've run into with your members. A teller requesting to sit instead of standing during shifts. A call center employee at a bank who needs more restroom breaks during pregnancy, or a branch manager who's asked for a reduced travel schedule during her third trimester. We recommend members create a streamlined process that covers both PWFA and ADA. Key steps that you could include in this process would be to make it easy for employees to request support, whether it's related to pregnancy or disability. Train managers to recognize when support might be needed. Employees don't have to use a legal term like accommodation. Encourage a proactive conversation with your management team members. If a manager sees someone struggling, it's appropriate to initiate a supportive dialogue with the employee. We always say documentation is key. From the initial request to the outcome, make sure you keep full record keeping of all the processes. And then you want to assess the undue hardship carefully. Don't assume, but evaluate based on the actual impact on your operations. You might want to have members, or we do remind members, to review their job descriptions so it clearly defines essential functions and will help them guide in the accommodation decisions. Updating handbooks and training the employees to reflect both of these regulations, PWFA and ADA, especially if you operate in multiple states. And then finally, KBA members also need to be aware of the Kentucky Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, which has been in place since 2019. And it shares similar goals as the PWFA, but it includes additional state-specific requirements that have to be followed.
Oh, that's great information, Sissy. Thank you for bringing that to our attention because that's a lot that has to be covered just in those two specific accommodations. So thank you. And I think every state has been impacted by this crazy summer weather, more and more severe storms. And here in Kentucky, it seems like every week we're having something happen with Mother Nature. What guidance does SeayHR have for our members on how to handle operational disruption with employees?
Oh, yeah. Over the past several years, I've spoken to many of your members in Kentucky who've experienced significant increase in these severe weather events, floods, snowstorms, tornadoes, and they're just not seasonal anymore. For
Yes.
for a bank that raises critical questions, are they prepared to keep operations compliant and when they can't be fully functional? One of the most important tools you can have is a written inclement weather policy in your handbook. Three key things that the policy should cover is how decisions will be made and communicated. It should be clear about who decides if a location will close or delay an opening and how that information will be shared to the employees, whether it's email, text alerts, phone trees. Timely communication avoids confusion and it protects both your employees and the operations of the bank. Number two is spell out whether time missed due to weather is considered paid, unpaid, or must be covered using PTO. If their policy varies depending on the situation, such as whether a branch is officially closed versus the employee couldn't get there, you need to make that distinction clear in the inclement weather policy. And then third and final, how wage and hour rules apply. For non-exempt hourly employees, you only need to pay for hours worked, but you have to be careful not to dock pay improperly for exempt staff. If an exempt employee works any part of the day, you typically must pay them for the full day, and that's a common area for accidental FLSA violations.
Thank you, Sissy. That's great information. And I also saw recently that SeayHR has a new service. Tell our audience about the retained executive HR search.
Sure, Selena, I can take that one. This is Marci. Yeah, we're really excited as
That's
we
great.
introduce our newest service offering here. So that is that retained executive search. So we're expanding to specifically support organizations who are looking to hire top tier HR leadership. So if you at your one of the member banks are seeking a HR manager, a director of human resources, or a chief human resource officer, CHRO, our new service provides national search capabilities to help you find the right leader no matter where they are. And with us just focusing on the HR recruiting, right? I think that really sets us apart because we're HR
Definitely.
experts ourselves, right?
Yes.
We uniquely understand exactly what HR challenges are and the strategic importance of an HR leadership role. So, these aren't just operational positions. They're pivotal in shaping a bank's culture, driving performance, and aligning people's strategy with business goals. And so, it's like we're HR people, we know HR people, we know what you're looking for in an HR person, and we can really get to the heart of the matter when we're interviewing and sourcing and interviewing candidates, so that we're not just filling the role, we're helping you build leadership that can really transform your organization. And as with everything that we do here at SeayHR, our retained search model has a high touch, very consultative approach. We're going to start with the job description, make sure we really have a good understanding of what you're trying to accomplish, the goals for this role, learning about your culture, and then walking you, like, really over communicating every step of the way through the entire process, helping you curate questions, scheduling the interviews, follow-ups, offer letter creation, things along that nature to just give you that great confidence in every step of the process. So yeah, so we're really excited to share that if
Oh,
you
you
are,
should be.
thank you.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, we're
Yes, I
ready
think
to
that
partner.
brings peace of mind for many of our KBA member banks. And right now, it seems like there's so many retirements happening in
Yes,
our KBA member banks. So just to know that CHR can support that role of finding an HR expert to step in when the need exists, that's great. Thank
thank
you.
you. Thanks.
With CHR's relationship with the KBA, it's wonderful that it provides our member banks with the opportunity to call you free of charge when they have an HR legal question. What are some of the most often received questions from our banks?
Well, this is Sissy. I will take this one. The KBA hotline's been a resource on many employment-related issues. Some examples of some recent things that we've spoken to members about are classification of employees, whether they're exempt or non-exempt. The mortgage loan officer is always, a merry-go-round question that comes around quite a bit. Also, a lot of banks are looking for different styles of performance evaluations, not the traditional one fits all, but something that is maybe more specific to the financial industry or, to a certain level of employee. And then, interested in having maybe general HR policies, just a springboard so they can craft something internally that's tailored to their operations. And then lastly, we're always assisting them through the documentation process for leaves of absence, the interactive process under ADA, or progressive discipline.
Okay. It sounds like that keeps you busy there, Sissy. That's a lot of questions that come through that hotline, but we greatly appreciate that opportunity because so many times we just need your all's legal expertise to guide the banks on those many questions that get asked. From working with the community banks, do you suggest any strategies for banks when implementing services that you provide there at SeayHR?
Sure, this is Marci. I can take this one, Selena. Yeah, there are a couple things that come to mind with how we can best work together with KBA members. First off, it's just, we're here to help. So the more transparent and open the bank is with us, with the facts of the matter, even and most often when they don't feel, when you're not kind of seen in the best light, right? Still tell us everything, right? That we're only going to be able to really provide the best guidance and the most effective guidance if you give us the full story, kind of like we say here, the good and the bad and the ugly, right? Even if it doesn't make you look so great, we're not a legal entity, we're not the ones who are, we're not lawyers suing you or anything like that, right? We want to get the full facts of the matter, even if they don't make you look great, because that's going to help us to be able to navigate really more clearly through any sticky situation that you might be in. Secondly, call us on the seemingly small stuff. As Sissy mentioned, we've got the KBA member hotline where we've got lots of different questions that come in. We highly recommend that you use it. Call us when it might feel silly or small or inconsequential, because that is absolutely the stuff that can fester and become much bigger issues down the line. I'm sure some of your members are nodding along with us right now that is absolutely the case when they think about their major HR issues they have. We always hear, God, I wish I would have just nipped this in the bud a year ago or 6 months ago when it first started, right? And it didn't turn into this big thing. So that's something I would really recommend. And lastly, as you're talking about, Selena, earlier with retiring HR folks, or maybe you don't have in-house HR currently, or your HR team might be overtasked. We can serve as your fractional HR team. So we work with clients across the country as their fractional HR team, providing that day-to-day guidance on HR issues and compliance matters and HR strategy work. And we're able to provide a really cost-effective solution that helps your banks avoid costly HR issues, and all, of course, at a KBA member discount, of course. And what I think we're starting to see a trend, and Sissy can back me up on this, is we're still getting the day-to-day questions on the hotline from KBA members all the time, and we'd love to continue to see more and more of those. But we're also starting to see more and more KBA members come to us for more strategy, fractional HR support, and whether that is culture evaluations, trying to improve our culture of the bank, compensation management, how do we make sure that we're paying people fairly? We want to implement a new compensation structure, things along the lines of employee engagement surveys, right? So there's a day-to-day stuff that you can call on the hotline, but I think the banks are starting to realize that not only are we helpful from that day-to-day, but we can also help with these more strategic initiatives and also fractional HR as as we become more and more known about as a great member benefit for KBA members.
That is great to know because so many of our member banks are starting to open new locations and add to their employment base. And so I can only imagine that a bank that used to be I don't know, 500 million, and now they're getting close to a billion. That
Right.
HR that HR staff needs to grow along with that staff. So to know that CHR is out there able to help the HR department, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and
I,
I'll add to that too, Selena, in that kind of scenario, we see that a lot and where perhaps at the time you needed an HR manager level or an HR generalist level, and now you're growing. And now you're at a point where, gosh, do we need a full-time HR director? I don't know. Could we have help with that? That is absolutely where we play really, really well. And so you keep your HR manager, your HR generalist, but when things get sticky, they can call us, or we want to do more of a strategic initiative or an HR plan, long-term vision or plan for the organization. That's where you can call us in to support. And so it's not displacing your current HR team by any means, but it's being an additive without, the
exactly.
full burden of hiring a full-time person. Now, there are times when you need a full-time person, and that's where we have that executive search as well, right? So
Yes.
really, it's kind
Yes.
of any sort of HR scenario, we're here to help your members.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at that as a home run. That's a big win when you've got you there to get the banks through all those needs that they might have in the HR department. And I know several times today you've mentioned the employee handbook and making sure those policies are all of that is documented. And so when KBA members need CHR for consulting services, like creating that employee handbook, how long does it take for a bank to get up and running with CHR when they decide to partner with you?
Well, this is Sissy. I'll say my experience is, once they reach out to us and, we put forth this is what it's going to take and this is our timeline, we begin working on a priority basis. And of course, it's going to be contingent upon what the nature and the scope of the project is. If they haven't looked at their handbook since 1995 and, they've multiplied exponentially, then we definitely have a lot more work to do because there's going to be more areas to expand on. But if it's just a little tweak, we can get it to them in a quick manner. We're really good at turning things around because once again, if they identify themselves as a KBA member, we put them up there with the VIPs.
Thank you. That's great to know. And I love your all's newsletter. I would recommend any of our listeners to at least go out there and get your CHR Insight newsletter. And the most recent article I saw was how engaged are your employees really?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was such a great article because that is, I think it's a mystery. Can you provide tips for our members on how to track engagement with their employees?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think yeah, the the idea that we have, I think oftentimes as leaders, and I will put myself in this bucket, right? Like we either kind of sometimes are in our own little bubble and believe things are going really well and we're hearing some positive feedback. Okay, great, we're doing a great job, we're moving in the right direction. But we're not necessarily fully digging in or being vulnerable to really listen and learn and really understand, from every level of what's working and not working within our organization. And so, as a part of employee engagement is first off, you've got to be open to listening to what is going to be said, because if you're just not in that mindset or if that's not where you're at, this is not going to be a worthwhile exercise to go through. You're going to waste money and time and energy and nothing is going to change. But for those, those members, those leaders that are, hey, I really want to hear it. I'm okay hearing the tough stuff, even though it is tough, but I really want to understand how, where we're at as a company culture, how engaged our employees are, and how we can best support them. There are things that can be done, and a couple of ways to accomplish that is through an employee engagement surveys. I know a number of KBA members do that currently. In some cases, we take a look at it of the survey that you're using. We might make some tweaks to that, right? We might not be asking the tough enough questions. Again, we might not be, totally making sure that we're scratching below the surface on that. We want to look at engagement on even the survey, right? If we can't get even 50% of our team members to respond to an employee engagement survey, that could be a canary in the coal mine of what our overall engagement is. And then, we have worked with some of our clients in the past on doing some employee engagement diagnostics. And so it's kind of going a deeper level than a survey, which can start us and start to get an idea of what's going on. But we're going to go in and we're going to do some interviews with employees at different levels. And we're really going to be asking the tough questions to really understand where your employees' minds are at, what their engagement levels are, what's working, what's not working, where are there areas for improvement. And then we can take that back with the leadership team. We can prioritize it and we can help you to either put together a plan to implement it or actually support you in implementing that. And all that's to say, Selena, I think the bottom line on all of this is that there are a number of different strategies that we can evaluate employee engagement, improve employee engagement. But if we're not really willing to actually, take in what's being told to us, then maybe that's where we need to start, right? Is to really understand that first and really kind of crack through that from a vulnerability and an openness standpoint at the leadership level. Because the worst thing, I think it's even worse, is to put out an employee engagement survey when you don't ever take any action on it. I think that's worse than just doing nothing at all.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say we've seen that in KBA members, but we've seen that with some other industries and some other clients. So I always like to say that if you're just doing an employee engagement survey to do a checkbox to say, well, we did this, and you're not actually taking that information, learning from it, and looking to make adjustments to how you do things, your culture, things along that nature, stop doing the employee engagement survey because you're actually doing more harm to your culture than help. So that's where I would start.
What great information. And you, as far as SeayHR, you definitely cover every, I guess, from A to Z, everything that a bank could possibly need for HR. And thank you for all that you do for our members. What is the best way for our audience to get in contact with you and your team to learn more about SeayHR and the services that you provide?
Yeah, the best option is for them to reach out to the member hotline. And the member hotline can be through our phone number, which is 888-245-6272, or from the email admin, ADMIN, admin at seayy.us. So both of those ways are great ways to reach us. We also have a lot of resources on our website. And our website is seayhr.com. And that's where you can find a lot of the blogs that we write, a lot of other resources, and some more details about the services that we offer to your members above and beyond the member benefit. And of course, with any of our project work, fractional HR, anything like that, Selena, your members get a discount as well for being KBA members, in addition to that complimentary HR hotline. So, we're here to help you all. And that's the best way to get a hold of us is through that member hotline.
Thank you, Marci. And through KBA's website at kybanks.com, we also have a page dedicated to SeayHR so that you can go there and read more about the relationship and all the ways that SeayHR can help you. So thank you, Marci. Thank you, Sissy, for being here today and for all the excellent information that you've shared with our audience. That's all for this episode of Vendor Viewpoint. Until next time, this podcast is a wrap. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for being with us.